So the day of the interview has finally arrived and you are ready to go out there and smoke your interview. There's a couple pointers that I want to give you to ensure that we create a stress-free day. Do whatever your morning ritual is. If you need to wake up and run 10 miles, take a cold shower, have a cup of coffee, eat a big egg breakfast, whatever you need to do to get yourself jazzed up in the morning, do that. Beyond that, what we want to do is, our goal, as I already mentioned this, is we want to create as stress-free of an experience as possible. One of the biggest challenges that people run into when they don't actually get a position or they feel like they struggle through an interview actually has a high correlation to the stress levels on the day of the interview. And I can readily attest to a lot of these items are able to be prevented, or the stress level is able to be prevented by doing a few bits of prep on the day of the interview and being conscious of a few items. So once again, our goal is proper preparation to prevent poor performance. So number one, we want to make sure that you show up early to your interview. Very simple, a very common knowledge thing, but I can't tell you how important it is to build in 10, 15, 20 extra minutes of time that you give yourself as a buffer to show up early to your interview. You'd rather show up 20 minutes early than 1 minute late. Not because number one, it looks unprofessional if you show up late, but number two, your stress level is way higher if you're later. So if you're somebody who's always running behind, make sure you budget that extra time. If it's in person, map out where you're going ahead of time the night before so that you know how long of a drive you have. Know what the rush hour might be, because if you're looking up how far of a drive it is ahead of time and you don't budget for the day of traffic, those could be two very different numbers. Other thing, know what parking is around it. If parking is actually tough to come by, have some of those answers ahead of time so that when you get to the office, when you get to the building, you actually know exactly what you're going to do when you get there. And even if you do get lost and even if you do get a little bit lost when you get to the actual building, if you have 15, 20 minutes of cushion time, now you feel very comfortable. It doesn't put you in a state of stress, and you're okay because you know that you're still going to be early, regardless if you take a wrong turn on your way to the interview. If you're doing a Zoom or you're doing a video virtual interview, you want to make sure that you jump onto that video platform a few minutes early. So a couple things I recommend doing. I already talked about having that software downloaded ahead of time. Do that, and then also test it out. You've already tested it out, so you know that it's going to work. If you use the Zoom platform, you can dial out audio to your phone. So I highly recommend doing so because your audio is going to come through more crisp and more clear through your phone than it will likely, especially if you encounter a shaky internet connection. On top of that, just make sure that you have a clean background. If you need to hang up a sheet or something that just makes it look a lot cleaner, I highly recommend doing so. And make sure that your lighting's good. You don't want to get on the camera and then not be able to see your face because your lighting's all funky and it looks all dingy and dark and it looks like you're sitting in a tunnel. So make sure that you have good audio, make sure that they can see you, and make sure that you're presentable on the video interview. So on top of that, to transition into the next topic, when you're actually on the day of the interview, a second thing that I recommend doing is just ensure that when you get to the interview, if it is in person, have a good handshake. Very small, very subtle thing, but just ensure that the first person that you meet and every person that you interview with, you give them a good handshake if they're open to doing so. Know their culture, know whether or not they're open to giving you a handshake, but if you have the opportunity to do so, make sure you look them directly in the eyes and that you give them a nice firm handshake so that your hand's not all floppy and shaking around when they try and shake your hand back, but just feel confident, and look them directly in the eyes. It will go a really long way. It's a moment or two where you can really connect with the person. Last thing, as you're preparing on the day of the interview, we already talked about all of the items that you want to bring with you. And if it is an in-person interview, you want to bring a good-looking handbag, you want to bring a good-looking backpack, you want to bring something that you can carry things with you. If you are doing a Zoom or a video interview, you want to exchange the handbag, you want to exchange that with a cup of water. because I can't tell you the amount of times people get on an interview and they get thirsty halfway through and they do not have a cup of water with them. You can actually throw a water bottle in your handbag or backpack when you actually go to an in-person interview as well. So have a cup of water handy, have something handy to take notes with. Just make sure that you're not, the whole goal is to prevent scrambling. So that if you could do a test run, I recommend the day before actually pretending like your interview is that day, especially if it's over video, so that you go into the room, you set up, you get everything set up, and you have you go all the way to the point of you starting the interview, so that you make sure you know all of the clicks, everything is in place, everything looks good on the day of the interview, so you don't have to think through those things when you're more concerned, and your focus should be around the conversation, the communication, and answering their questions so that you can best present yourself as a candidate. So to recap, number one, show up early. Whether it's on Zoom and a video call or whether it's in person, make sure that you show up early. It goes a very long way. Number two, make sure that you have a clean backdrop if you are using a video conferencing service to do your interview. Number three, make sure that when you do show up to the interview and you're early, make sure that you give them a good handshake, you look them in the eyes, and you feel confident in doing so. And number four, do a trial run and just make sure that you have everything set to go for your interview in the morning. Because once again, our goal is to create a stress-free environment, and on the day of the interview, we want to take steps to reduce stress and to put systems in place so that you're not going to put yourself in that state of stress and feel like you have to focus on a bunch of items that aren't actually a part of getting you a job. We want your focus to be on the interview itself, having the conversation, and presenting yourself as best as you can as a candidate for that position.